Welcome to the Red Letters Podcast. In this podcast, we will explore topics that can be life transforming while delivering a message of hope.
Hello, and welcome to this week's Red Letters Podcast. Today, we will be discussing wasting time versus investing time. That's a really interesting topic, and we wasted no time getting to this topic. So, Tony?
Yep. Well, I think a lot of times, I think when it comes to time management, we don't really think, or maybe we don't pay attention so much to how we're spending our time, whether it's investing or if we find ourselves wasting time with different activities or whatever. So I think that just this topic, that's kind of why I felt like it would be worth discussing, because we don't always think about that.
Right.
Like how throughout our day, how productive are we at the end of the day? Sometimes, you could be doing a lot of stuff, but it's almost like you're on the treadmill. You're running, you're being active, but you ain't going nowhere.
You're not getting
And I
anywhere,
think
yeah.
that it's something that's worth discussing. So I think that's part of my thought, but we could dive in now.
Yes. So, what I really dislike about people, we're just going to get started, okay?
Yeah. Ding, ding.
When people say, I'm so busy, that gets to me.
That's a good one.
Then you ask, okay, what does your day look like? And then for me, I don't ask. I like to observe. I'm like, so how are you so busy? You're just busy wasting time. Mm-hmm. Do you get it? Like, you're busy wasting time.
Yeah.
Do something, like be productive with your life. Because I say this because I tend to be very busy, which means I'm constantly doing something. I'm actually doing something, meeting people, going out and talking to people, going here, going there, picking up, doing stuff. And then you see somebody else who hasn't done anything all day. And then you ask them, well, could you do this? Well, I would have done it, but I am so busy. And you ask, what did you do? And they'll say something like, well, I went to the store and I bought milk. I'm sorry, and I have an issue with that. I want people to break it down to me. What is your idea of being busy? Yeah. So I guess that's what I would ask you guys. What is your idea of actually being busy? Is it saying it or actually being productive? Or how do you measure what you're actually doing?
I would probably look at it as activities that's going to push my life forward.
Right.
Because I know I've heard this many times, I'm sure we all have, where the time is the most precious commodity and valuable commodity you ever have. So I think being not so much having a task list, because it could just be a bunch of errands, that you're just more maintaining your life, but it's not really pushing your life forward. Right. So I think in investing would be more when your life is being pushed forward by doing something different, instead of maybe sitting down on Netflix for a long time and letting those hours be consumed, but you turn around and either read or you're watching something that's going to actually give you some information that could help you accomplish something, whether it's in your personal life, your business, whatever the case is. I think that's why it's important to kind of step back and look at where are you spending your time. Even in your relationships, we maybe started off like what we do with our time, but even the time that's invested in a relationship could be wasted time, or it can be an investment of time. Like a lot of times me and my wife will mention, like, if we're going to go catch a movie, I don't feel like we're investing in our relationship. We're spending time together. Mm-hmm. But if we do a different activity where we're interacting, then it feels like an investment. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? So I think in our relationships, we need to even pay attention with that, whether it's your spouse, whether it's, a best friend or whatever the case is there like a pouring into each other that's taking place? Because if that's another way of saying that you're investing, because you're making deposits in those relationships. Right. But if you're not doing that, and it's just like you're twiddling your thumbs and just doing stuff that doesn't really help anybody, either one of you, like they turn around and I think we might have used this illustration before, but they keep a crab in a bucket by putting a second crab in there because they'll pull each other down. Oh, wow. Yeah. But if you put one in there, it tries to get out. But once you put two, they're pulling each other down because that's the circle that they're in, and they don't want one to excel without the other. So if I can't excel, I'm going to keep you down too. So I think that's one of those ways that you could have a visual of what it looks like to waste time with friends or the circle you're running with.
But also, Tony, would you agree, Ida, that a lot of people, depending on what generation you come from, believe that resting is wasting time. But we all know that the body needs rest. Yeah. And that's investing in yourself, because in the long term, you're going to be okay. But it's learning how to moderate that, if you will. So because one thing is we become lazy and then we just want to sit around. But another thing is when we go to work all day, we come home and then we, like he said, decompress. We need that time for ourselves. We need to invest that time properly so that we know that we're okay and fueled for the next day. Yeah. And for people listening, I think that a lot of us think that being busy means, investing time means you got to be doing stuff and people got to see you doing something. But a lot of times you're investing by reading something that is not just going to help you, but it's going to help other people when you're able to share that information. But to others, it may look like you're not doing anything, but in reality you are, because you're investing in learning. You want this wisdom so you can go out and share it with others. And the reason I say that is because I have a hard time of just sitting still and not doing anything. And for me, it seems like you're just wasting time sitting here reading, but I'm not. Like, I'm actually doing something. So I have to talk myself out of that, because in reality, I'm doing something for myself to help others. But for me, it's like you're just being lazy because you're sitting here. It doesn't make sense. But
by appearance, it looks like somebody might be being lazy, but their mind is actually engaged. Their probably imagination is looking at what they're reading in their mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's probably a lot of activity going on, but from the blind eye, it looks like you ain't doing anything.
You're not doing anything.
Yeah. And it probably frustrates the person that, needs to be moving, having a lot of movement to feel like they're accomplishing something. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, I actually value my rest time. I actually love taking
She's
naps.
Awake now.
No, I do. I personally like taking naps. I value my time to rest, and I think it's okay. Yeah. It's not like I sleep all day, but if I take an hour or two nap, I don't feel like I've wasted the day or wasted time. Right. Because throughout the day I do things, but it's not like I'm constantly moving and doing stuff. Uh-huh. But the stuff that I do, I think I could be more productive with my time, and maybe doing a little more things. But it's the organization part of my time that I'm not very good with, because I've always been the type of person that just, wake up in the morning, I'm going to just focus on today. Yeah. What can I get done today? And then just take my time doing one thing at a time, because the only frustration I think I have is when it comes to cleaning the house. Mm-hmm. It can take a whole day, because I can't just clean one room and not clean the rest of the house. So for me, it's like if I start in my room, I've got to start from my room and work my way to the whole entire house until I can actually just sit down and say, I'm done. Yeah. So for me, that's the struggle that I have too. I can't just do piece by piece. I have to get it all done the same day. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's like, I don't feel that I'm lazy and I don't believe that I'm lazy, but I do admit that I can, be a little more productive with time, because I do have time. Yeah. And I try to fill it with other things, even if I have to just meet up with people and stuff like that. But I think that with especially wasted time, when you have those conversations, when you're let's say talking with someone or somebody's seeking counsel or things like that, I think you have to really know how to control the conversation to where it's not wasting time and you're being productive with that conversation and something's getting done with it.
I came across this. I was looking it up to share. But here's some of the things that they say would be wasting time and how it compares to something that you could do of almost equal time. Is it watching too much TV? I know we talked about that. You can watch courses to better yourself. Yeah. Then there's the wasting time of playing video games, but investing time would be networking with others. Oh, okay. The third one would be wasting time. We waste time when we're complaining. And here it's saying learn a new skill. Then you're actually going to be investing your time. A couple more was comparing yourself to others is a form of wasting time, because your thoughts just go rampant and in your comparison. But then the opposite of that would be working on a side hustle. You know, what else could you
side
do?
hustle.
Yeah.
I would love to get a side hustle. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. And then the other one is like procrastinating, and then compared to even like going to the gym.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of contrast on what we're doing and how we go about it. But I think part of somebody who is wasting time could actually even be having a low self-esteem of themselves, because sometimes they don't think they're worth it. So they're kind of in a rut where they can't get through or break out of that, because they're maybe just having an identity issue, if you will, where they're just kind of staying in this little bubble of wasting time, whatever that looks like. And sometimes it could be camouflage that they're busy, like we were talking about earlier. But a lot of times when people are investing time and they know the value of them, they're chasing something, you know, and there's actually steps that, you know, maybe it's not a big step every day, but you know, you turning around and doing a little bit today, it actually, there's a book called The Compound Effect, that you making this little change every day, it has a compound effect. You look back a year later and you're multiplied further ahead because of the investment that you did, whatever that thing is that we're chasing.
And you can get pulled into, Tony, like becoming a person that wastes time. I say this because I had a job, and I sit there and I would look at the people, and all they did was talk about how much work we have, but they were always standing around chatting. They were always on another break, and I'm walking and working, and talking and texting, because I have to do that with clients. And I would sit back, I'm like, all you do is complain about how busy you are, and you're just sitting there. So what did Mary do? I decided, well, I don't have to work so hard. I mean, I'm not an overachiever. Come on. So then I started slacking off, because it's easier to waste the time than to actually invest. And then I have to regroup and be like, well, why are you trying to be like them? You're wanting to get ahead. Instead of goofing off and going to take those 10 breaks, why don't you start reading more into what this company is and what they do, and become better at it, and pick something that you want so you can actually start teaching that? Because there's a lot of programs in that company that you could run and do. And I was like, well, why am I trying, you know? And when you talk to people, people will tell you exactly who they are and what they want to do. I don't care. I just showed up for a paycheck. So then, is that who you want to hang around with? Because that's what you'll become. You're wasting time. But instead, it's like, no, I want to go and invest in me, because I know what it's going to do in the long run. So, but one of my things was I could see everyone around me not doing anything. So it became easy. I was like, well, I want to go take another break, but do I really want to? Because then I feel bad about it later, guilty because I could have been doing something to better myself. And instead I fell into, you know, what everybody else was doing. I fell into, what do they call it? I was conforming to the greater mass. And I was like, don't do that, Mary. So yeah, that's something else that I think we need to be aware of. If somebody else isn't doing anything, and then we think, well, why am I doing it? Well, think about why you're doing it. Don't try to fit into somebody else who's not doing anything and getting anywhere in life, and try to be like them. Try to do something different. Get out of that comfort zone, if you will.
Yeah. Not only that, I think one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is there's always somebody watching. His name is God. So he'll turn around. If you're a poor steward with your time, you'll find, you know, it says a little folding of the hands, a little sleep, a little slumber, poverty's going to come on you like a thief in the night. Your life will be robbed and pulled out from under you, because you're just twiddling your thumbs and, I'll just let today be today, and not really have any aim or focus or anything like that. But every time I see somebody that's like a good steward with their time, and believe it or not, I know this applies to believers, knowing that, hey, know that your God is watching. But I honestly believe that even people that don't believe in God, that God will actually give grace to some of them people because they're good stewards of their time. And because they are, God will give more, because that's a principle. You know, if you're faithful with little, you'll get much. Right. So it's just something to think about. If you're not prospering on your job, if you're not prospering in life, maybe you need to sit back and look at what you're doing with your time, because it's either could be blessed or it could become a curse. So you have actually the authority to determine which of those two paths you want to do. So your time has a big factor to play and how that plays out.
And going off what you were saying about the people sitting and twiddling their thumbs, what would you say to the people that are in that situation? Because I know it's not easy to invest. It's a lot easier just to waste it, and people might not even be conscious that they're wasting it. And I heard someone talking about like a UFC fighter, and he was saying how before he was in the UFC, he was just waiting to die. He would go to his 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, drink a beer, go to sleep, clock in, clock out, get a beer, go to sleep. And he was just waiting to die, and he didn't feel like he had purpose. And then he started fighting the UFC. But what would you say to the person that's still, maybe knows it, but they don't know what, how to break that? Yeah, get out of it. Because I think it's, it's almost like a chain that holds you down. And it's not until you like, okay, I've had enough and I want to do better.
Well, I think part of it would have to, you have to realize that you're created for a purpose. And I think if you don't realize that you have a purpose here in life, you're going to stay in that rut. And I think once you realize that you have a purpose and that there's an assignment that you have to accomplish, and that's why there's a need for you to even be breathing here on earth, that God has you here for a reason. What that reason is, you could sit back and on the recliner and hope that someday, you'll hear this voice from the sky. Or you could start, okay, what could I start to do that can get me, at least get the ball rolling? And as you start going through these doors of opportunity, you start finding what your purpose is, because people will start acknowledging it and start telling you, man, I see this gift on you. I see you're good at this. And as you hear the things like that, many people will downplay, oh, no, I'm not. Oh, no. But if you would just take time to listen and actually consider that maybe there's truth to that, and maybe God's using that person to throw a hint to you, hey, pursue this. This is part of what you're gifted for. This is where your talent is. There's a reason why multiple people at different stages of your life are recognizing this. It's not a coincidence. It could be different if you're in one little club and these 3 people, 4 people are saying the same thing about you. Maybe that could be a coincidence. But many times that I've seen is that different people, different times, different settings, different environments, different, stages, people are saying the same thing. And then you start recognizing, hey, this person said this, 5 years ago, and I remember that. Yeah. And wow, last month I did, I was doing this thing and somebody else complimented the same thing that I did. Maybe I am. There's a possibility that I could be a good writer. What does that look like? Does it mean write a book? Does that mean do short stories? What does that look like? Let me start diving into that and try to figure it out. Because that's what happened to Sylvester Stallone. I had to bring him up because he's one of my heroes, But he when he wrote that thing of Rocky, what do you call it? I don't know if you guys heard the story, but Fonzarelli, they were real good friends. So when Sylvester Stallone came to L.A., Henry Winkler turned around and saw the script of Rocky. And he's like, hey, put it before these other producers, Paramount and all this other. And they went ahead and bought it, and they were going to shelf it. But they said, no, that guy's not going to play the part. And he's like, no, get that back. And he goes, no, once they buy it, they don't give it back. So Henry Winkler went back to the producer and said, look, I know you don't do this, but here's the money. I need the script back. And they're like, we don't do that. Yeah, I know you don't do that, but can you please do that? After the 3rd time, they actually gave it back to him. He gave it back to Rocky, and all the doors were shut, but he had this like, hey, no, I know I could walk out this thing that I wrote. And I think they said within 24 hours or 48 hours the most, he wrote the whole script. Wow. He was locked up in an apartment. And as he did that, he started feeling like, as he's writing, he's like, I'm feeling this person, and it's inside of me, and it's coming out so natural. Yeah. And so then he pursued it. And now look at him. He's one of the wealthiest actors, period. One of the top 5, I believe. And it's because he kept knocking at it. He was pursuing something. He didn't get lazy with his life and then figured out what the purpose was. But it took him a minute.
What would you say to people who live to hustle? Because Mary, you touched earlier about resting. And that's the first time that you read in Genesis where the Lord called it holy. And it was because he rested. Right. So there's a lot of people that I know and I've met who live for the hustle. They're like, you got to hustle. You can't stop. You got to grind. And then you kind of see their life and there's not as much fruit of course they're prospering financially maybe, but then their life and their family is kind of neglected because of it. Or even their bodies are neglected because they're like, I'm grinding, I need this. They don't sleep, whatever it is. What would you say to those people who are on the opposite, where they know what they want, but they're grinding so hard that maybe they're kind of like just focusing more on that, and it's not really like helping them internally?
Yeah, I would say to that person, are you properly investing your time? And what does investing to that person look like? Because if all you're looking for is the money and the material and you don't care about the family, then you're doing exactly what you want to do. In the long run, will this pay off? So I would say I would reevaluate what my priorities are and see where my family is, or those that I love, where are they, and what is my relationship with them? And if it's not where I need it to be, maybe I should shift from this grind to, okay, let me invest time with my family, or even in myself, as opposed to always trying to make that fast buck or that next dollar. That's what I would say, but it's really hard to get there, I think, for a lot of people, because they're already set in their ways. I wanted to answer also Gio's question. I just wanted to make a comment towards it. I read a quote a long time ago that said, that this gentleman said this: I strongly believe, after all the research that I have done, that every person is exactly where they are because that's exactly where they set out to be. And if y'all know me, it messed me up because I didn't want to be in the situation that I was in, and I didn't understand the quote. I went on to read more of his work, and I got to see what he meant by that. And basically what he meant is like, you get what you want out of life because that's how much you put into it. And it's how they invested their time, is how they did the hustle. I was trying to go out there and do this and make this and look good, but I failed to see what really meant anything to me. And the life that we're living in, the times that we're living right now, people put more emphasis and more priority on having things and having a certain status, that they forget what God gave us, which is a creative mind, a heart to love others, that thing that we have inside to be kind and to serve others. But most people nowadays are doing things to serve themselves instead of to serve other people. But if we can go back to Genesis, and we can go back to how God wanted it to be in the beginning, it was to serve others. It wasn't to self-serve. And then we could see that there would be a change or a shift in time, or a shift in what's going on right now, because people would be doing what we were set out to do, what we were created to do. And a lot of us get stuck in, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I believe that it has to do a lot with being lazy. It's like, it takes more work to get up, go find the right books. It takes more work to get into, like, let me Google inspirational something that's going to teach me something. What I already know, and I can do this all day. I can get up, I can eat, I can sit down, I can watch TV. That people got comfortable there. A lot of young people and even older adults. So what the work is, and I say this to a lot of the people that I work with, it's like, the hard work is actually getting up and doing it. It's that first step, like you said, Tony. When he read that script, it was like, I know I can do it, but what did he have to do? He had to take a first step, and then you have to keep going. And what I would recommend to people who feel stuck is write a goal, just one goal for the week. This week, I plan to do this. And then eventually in that week, you're going to get up and do it. And the reason that I say that is because some of us have learned how to be lazy. Some of us have learned how to complain and make excuses. But it takes more work to actually get up and say, I'm going to make a goal and I'm going to stick to it. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to make a 1 week goal. And then you start with your monthly goals and then your yearly goals. Because I know you guys have heard this before, probably from me, but I've said, and I got it from somebody else, that a ship without a captain, it doesn't get anywhere. And that's a person without a goal. We're never going to get anywhere. But if you put a goal in place, then you have something to work towards. So I think that would be the best way to invest your time instead of wasting your time. And if you feel like you're stuck somewhere, that you said, well, this is just the way that life is, the only person that can get you out of that is you.
Yeah, I would even add, like, if you're either in the rut where you can't see, going back to your question earlier about, how do you get out of that? I think that maybe you have to have a talk to yourself in front of the mirror. Mm-hmm. And I know it sounds a little ridiculous, but if you turn around and you look at, maybe I haven't been as diligent with my life as I should have been, and times I'm actually wasting a whole lot of time, and man, I'm like feeling convicted on what I'm doing with my time, and condemned, and all this stuff. If you have a conversation with yourself in the mirror and you turn around and look at yourself and say, you know what, I'm sorry that I haven't treated you right. I'm sorry that I've neglected you. You're worth more than this. There's people depending on you. You have kids. You have many sets of eyeballs looking at you. You have close friends and family members, maybe parents that are hoping you do something with your life. And you have a good heart-to-heart with yourself. And it, like I said, it might sound ridiculous, maybe do when nobody's home. But start talking to yourself on what you're going to do for yourself. Because that creative power is at work, because just like God spoke things into existence, I think that's what would be happening in that time of you talking to yourself. You're putting the ball in motion and creating something that wasn't to be now or moving forward. And I just remember a quote that I read a long time ago. It says, rather than wasting time on yesterday that is gone, it is better to invest your time in tomorrow that is not yet born. So that's the conversation you can have with yourself in order to try to change and break the monotony of being unproductive and feeling that my life's on the back burner.
Okay, so I have this thought, okay? Because a lot of people will be like, oh, Ruth, what are you doing? And like on the 29th or the 30th of this month, I'm like, dude, I don't plan that far ahead. Unless I want a day off, I don't plan it.
Because it's 2 weeks.
It's 2 weeks, I have to plan it. But typically I don't plan because at a young age, I read that verse and I know I take it literal, but it says tomorrow's not promised and we're fools to think that it would come, right? Something like that. Yeah. And a lot of people plan, what's your 5-year, 10-year plan? And I'm like, okay, my brain's like, I feel like I'm contradicting myself. But then also too, it's like, well, wisdom says you need to plan ahead. And so I'm kind of torn between, okay, am I supposed to plan that far ahead and just pray that it happens? Or is it like, okay, like Mary's saying, like every day that God gives you, take that as a chance to build your tomorrow if it comes. Mm-hmm. But I'm torn between that because I want to invest time. But then sometimes I'm like, am I wasting time because I'm not planning like 10 years ahead of time? Like I'm almost on the cusp of 30. And I'm like, dang, do I have to plan like my retirement now?
I want to answer that one, Ruthie, because I used to think that too. And when I started reading, when I read the Bible and I read that verse, I was like, why am I even worried about tomorrow? I don't even know if it's going to come. Yeah. But then I read another verse and it says, honor your parents. How many know the verse? Yeah. Okay. And I had horrible parents. So I was like, I honored them. So now I'm going to have a long life. I was like, oh, good. I bought me some time because even though they weren't the best of parents, I really believe that. I'm going to have a long life.
So does my mom. She says it all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then she plans for tomorrow's because whether it comes or it doesn't, I want God to find me working. Okay. So if it comes tomorrow, He's going to find me working. So I've planned ahead. Because no matter what, if he decided I'm going to do something on the 30th, but if he decided to take me on the 25th, he already knows, gosh, Mary's ahead of her time because she's already working on the 30th too. But that's just for me, that's how it works. It's like, I know that tomorrow is not promised, but if he gives it to me, I'm going to get up and I'm going to make the best of it. And in that, I'm going to plan ahead because I have to. Like I have bills to pay, so I'm going to have to plan ahead. And, birthdays for the kiddos, I'm always planning ahead because of it. Now, if he gives it to me, thank you and all glory to him. And if he didn't, he still found me working because that's also in the Bible.
Well, one thing too, in the Bible, it says when you know that it's not promised to you and you're a fool to think that, but it also says too in the Bible that you always pray that God, if it's your will, if you will tomorrow to come, then blah, blah, blah.
I was going to say the same thing as far as the Lord willing. Right. This isn't to come to pass. But one person that I would kind of look at in the Bible to kind of help you see the opposite perspective would probably be Joseph. If he did not plan, his family would have been dead. Right. They would have been slaves. They would have But because he planned and stored up the stock, he planned. But I don't believe there's a difference between planning and working towards it and being consumed with it, that's all you're thinking. And I think that's where you cross the line, where you're just consumed with it and you're going to kick and scream until that happens. But to turn around and to see something, why else would it say, call those things that are not as though they are? That's seeing something that's not yet, but that you see is going to materialize. So you could look at the one verse, like you said, but you have to look at it in light of other verses too.
No, right. I'm not
know what
just
I mean?
taking one. I'm just throwing it out there for conversation's sake. But also too, like Joseph that was a God-given assignment. It wasn't just like, you know what, I think we should plan, guys. It was more like, no, Pharaoh was given a dream, and then Joseph interpreted it and said, hey, God says however many, 7 years this, 7 years that, but it was God-given. So I think that's the difference, though, between nowadays. We're like, hey, we're going to plan, and we say God willing, but really, do we take God in the planning? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
But I know what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, even look at David. He was saving up to build the temple.
Right.
And God said, you're not going to be able to do that.
You can't do it.
Your
but
son will.
Again, God told him no.
I know.
You know
but
what I mean?
but before God spoke that,
Yeah.
he was saving.
Yeah.
He was working towards something.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to say.
But then the Lord popped his bubble and said, hey, sorry, kid.
I understand
Your
that, but what I'm
hands are full
saying
of blood.
that there's different people throughout the Bible that have made a big difference because they were willing to look to what's to come and looking for a better future for their people or for their family. So that's more the filter I'm saying, that you should have a vision of your future and go after it. But don't let it consume your today, that you can't function today. And that if you hit a speed bump today, oh, there goes my destiny. You know what I mean? Some people can actually get weird like that. That, oh, every little hiccup. No, it's just maybe instead of going down this street making a left, God's going to have you go through a few streets on the way because there's a reason. You might need to meet somebody in this season of their life and then go here and they're actually going to help participate in what you're going to do down the road. You're going to accumulate divine relationships in the process.
That are might help you in the long run.
There you go.
I don't know if it's in the same verse or if it's a different verse in another like gospel, but he was saying about don't be anxious for tomorrow.
Right.
And he said, because every day has its own worries.
Right.
So I think maybe that's where, the planning parts really just don't worry about it. I think you can plan for something, but, don't stress about it. If you're like, oh, I need bills for next month, God will take care of you, like the lilies, the birds, and all that stuff. So I think the whole thing about the planning, I think just don't worry about it.
Come on, Gio. Woo.
Dang.
I have one more thing that I wanted to mention to the group because I was writing this over the weekend. I know I'll just take 2 minutes, but
Take 4.
I heard.
I'll give you another one.
Yeah, I was. Who was? I don't know who I was talking to, but she said something, and I was like, "Wow, I've never heard that." She said, "Isn't it interesting our time on Earth?" And she starts talking to somebody else, and I walked away. But I overheard this. She said, "My youth, I had my body, and it was great, and I could have done anything." But my mind couldn't do what my body was telling it to do. And then I was like, okay, oh, whatever. But I sat down and I really thought about that. If you really think you guys are really young and you can run fast and run for miles and run up and run down. And
Why are you laughing at me? I can run.
You can live like your body, your physical body can do, you can stay up, you can eat at midnight, 3:00 and you're not worried about
She's talking
stomach
to you,
pains
dude.
or whatever. But if you think about what the physical body is able to do in your youth, if the mind in you, would it do all those things? Because the way I took it was, oh my gosh, I see people with illnesses and people that are struggling with health or whatever, or even jobs. And I said, why didn't you take advantage of it in your youth? He said, I didn't know this. But my body could go on all night. Like I could party all night. I could drink all night. I could consume anything and it didn't matter because my body could handle it. But if my mind knew what I know now in my 40s, I wouldn't have done all those things. And I just think to me, it's so beautiful. And if a young person, the young people out there, anybody under 30 could be like, why don't I invest more in the mind And instead of like believing that I'm going to live forever and be able to do all these things that I'm doing as a young person, I'm going to invest right now in me to become a better version of me. So in the long run, once I hit my 30s and 40s, I can still run. I can still do all these things because I didn't take it for granted when I was strong enough to do it. Because I think a lot of us put a lot of pressure or a lot of emphasis on, I can do anything. I can stay up all night. Yeah, but you don't know what you're doing to your mind. But what if we had it the other way around? What if we were just had so much wisdom and we really couldn't do much because our physical body couldn't do it, but we had all this wisdom? I don't know. I just thought about that. And I was like, I would invest in my mind before I would invest in my body. But obviously there has to be a balance, but invest in who you want to become and do it if you can do it when you're young, you don't have to face all these problems when you're get into your 40s or, later on in life. Yeah. I just thought, yeah.
Well, I was, when you were saying that, it's almost, I was thinking how it flip-flops as the years go by.
Yes.
Your mind actually gets more knowledgeable, the more wisdom hits you in your older years, but now your body can't keep up with your mind.
Now your body can't keep up, yeah.
So flip-flops throughout your timeline.
It's a sick joke, she said.
With that.
Yeah. And so we will go ahead and wrap it up, but we just wanted to just bring some information to our listeners, like investing. And you know what priorities are and what's important to you, but wasting time will really never buy you anything. Investing time will always give you a well of knowledge. So we encourage you to make a goal, go out there and just be the best version of yourself. Thank you.